Greetings YouTube. Hello, this is 3coursethoughts here. I hope everyone's doing well, hanging in there, and so forth. Today's topic is going to be that of college, and I want to provide an additional perspective on the general argument that is usually presented with the subject matter of college. Now, with that being said, there's some vocabulary that I'm going to be using in this video. So just to clarify, basically, one of them is a half-truth. So half-truth, I've said this in our previous videos, but just again, if you're new here, half-truth is basically a concept, an idea, an event in which it's presented in a way that seems legit, or legitimate or truthful, but in actuality, it's deceptive underneath the surface. So it seems true, and it probably is true, but to an extent. There may be some information left out. Prisoner's dilemma is the next word, vocabulary word, and that is basically where two or more parties, in which they both have needs, specific needs, sometimes even the same needs, that seem to be met on the surface, but there's room for potential backstabbing. That's to put it simply. And then the next term is college, which is basically a typical institution of higher learning. So a place you go to, quote unquote, for higher learning. Now, one of the main reasons I made this video, like I said, is I want to hopefully add to the discussion of college. There's been a lot of backlash and also debates. Is college useful? Is college useless? But with respect to that, this discussion is going to be primarily focused on undergraduate school, because by the time you usually get to graduate school, you're usually maybe a little bit more versed and experienced in making an informed choice. Usually, people sprung into undergraduate school and college is straight from high school. You're usually like, 17, 18, 19 years old, still very, very young, and usually extremely inexperienced in life through no fault of your own. So the argument with respect to college, is it useful or is it useless? The arguments usually for college being useless is, hey, college may be useless. I can go out and be an entrepreneur, or hey, I can learn all this stuff from college, or from the internet and YouTube and so forth. Like, hey, I could. And with that, I would say the entrepreneur route is that this is true. You can go out, potentially. Keyword is potentially, go out and start a business and start learning things without the heavy burdens of college. But you may not have certain things to fall back on via networking and other experiences. So take that how you will. From the learning from the internet, this is purely dependent on the type of learner you are. Some people, they need to be held responsible for things that they learn and so forth. So this learning from the internet or YouTube, very useful, but for many people, it's not for everyone. For many people, it's just a supplement. You need people to bounce ideas off of, directly ask them person to person. I'm not necessarily saying college is the remedy for that exactly, but bear with me. So the argument that college is useful, it is very much an experience. College is very much an experience in which you not only are given assignments to do coursework and stuff, but it's an experience in which you will most definitely have to interact with others. Not necessarily to pass the classes, depending on which classes you have, but more so of situations that will come up. There's a multitude of subjects that you will be presented with, some of which you're not going to be, generally speaking, you're not going to be knowledgeable on everything. So you may need to form groups, you know, usually that's the time in your life where you see different events happening around you and so forth, in which you have to make certain decisions. Very important life decision. Another one is it's a place in which you improve upon the skills and talents, the skill sets. What I mean by that is usually what you know how to do, you generally, someone told me this a long time ago. When I went to college, I kind of agree with them. They said, whatever you go to college, whatever you know how to do, when you go to college, you generally learn how to do it better. And maybe add some new skills on to that as well, which is generally true. Like if you're a good test taker, you generally may learn how to be a better test taker. If you're good at studying, you learn how to be a better studier. And then the last one is that there's a more open-ended curriculum compared to that high school. High school, they dictate everything that you do, generally speaking. But college, you generally choose your major, you choose the schedule, order of classes that you take. Now, these are arguments for college being useful, but is it really 100% useful? Well, college is indeed an experience, but is it the experience that would be the most effective for young adults? Once again, like I said in the previous argument, this depends on you. With you taking careful introspection and really looking, weighing the pros and the cons. Another aspect is you can improve upon your talents within college. This is true, but there are other ways you can also improve upon your talents. Get an internship. You can challenge yourself in an active manner via self-discipline or trying to learn a skill outside of college. Maybe tutoring, have a private tutor, or enroll in classes outside of college. You can do that as well. An open-ended curriculum. Well, with the open-ended curriculum, when you go outside of the realm of school, things appear open-ended, but they may not be open-ended. They are less open-ended depending on your particular situation. For instance, if you graduate from school and you are forced to work at a certain company, this company has certain rules, a certain schedule that that you have to adhere to keep the job. Like if the job starts at 7 in the morning, you have to be at 7. There's no open-ended. There's a lack of open-endedness with a situation like that. With that being said, let's go into the segue, which is what is the goal of college? So is it useful, useless? What's the goal of college? What's the point? This is very interesting because the college has evolved in terms of its goal, quote unquote goals, which is usually advertised. So that goal is generally advertised to its customers, which is yourself and other people that are prospective students. So long goal. I'm gonna talk about colleges in the United States because I did a little bit of minor research, and it's the primary reason that was advertised initially is like with the Ivy League schools such as Harvard and such, the very early colleges, is that when they were built, these are institutions in which they were a social marker and they're meant for prestige. So they were teaching the students there, it was for prestige. Oh, you went to Harvard, you went to this one of the few Ivy League schools that existed during that time. It was a social marker in which people were taught about the clergy and representing their family via their religious group, which is usually, I believe, the Protestants. But if I'm incorrect in that, please correct me in the comment section. The second reason, then as time passed, they built more colleges were built. Certain laws were passed to make it more accessible to generally the farming class, farmers, agriculturists, and so forth. In doing that, to appeal to this new demographic that was being more widespread to, the advertised goal changed. Prestige was less advertised, and it went to the theme of building upon practical knowledge. So, like I said before, farmers and so forth, it became a scenario in which, hey, you can go to this school and learn more different techniques on planting and harvesting crops, and maybe even like um, running your farm and so forth. So basically, there's a push on practical knowledge, and that was advertised as the quote unquote goal of college. More time passed, and the social dynamics of the United States changed once again. And with that change, the advertised goal of college took on another shift, or which was the quote unquote college experience, which is basically the student, as more students were being appealed to, the student body started to become a thing. Things like fraternities, sororities, that sort of thing. The quote unquote college experience. Going to college and have fun. This is the last time you have fun, before you're quote unquote grown up. Then events passed again, and another advertised goal later on was it became requirements. This is during the American High, in which, there was a massive boom in the American economy. GI Bills passed. Other factors were in which they made colleges more inclusive. They had Title IX passed and so forth, in which college became very inclusive. And with that, the next advertised goal, and also with that, funding was lost from the government. So with that, the advertisement that the colleges came up with is its quote unquote goal. It's a requirement for you to get a job. You go to college and you get a job. So they start tying that narrative where going to college is tied to getting a quote unquote good job and the white picket fence and American dream. And then we come to today. What is the goal of college today? Well, the answer is that it's all of these previous things. There's an element of prestige, which is if you go to like a famous school like Harvard or quote unquote Ivy League and so forth. Another portion is building on practical knowledge, things you already know, facts that are connected to our grander world that we live in and such. The college experience is like clubs, fraternity, sororities still exist. You go to college, you have a good time while you're there, and it's quote unquote a requirement in the sense that employers are requiring it, and so forth. So, with all these things, with the modern era, is that there's a problem with college. All these different factors, prestige, the college experience, learning practical knowledge, and also it's a quote unquote requirement to get a quote unquote decent job. That's the advertised reason for the quote unquote goal of college, but that's a half truth. They're presenting this to you because all these things are possibly true. A lot of employers are requiring you to have a college degree. There is something to be said about college in which it is a unique experience. College does have an element of prestige to it. So if you go to Joe Schmo College compared to Harvard, and you have the same qualifications, and employers watching these two things, they're probably going to more favorably weigh the Harvard application resume compared to the Joe Schmo College. So prestige gets a check, and also practical knowledge. You can learn a lot of textbook or real world knowledge or aspects of real world knowledge within the institution of college. So that also gets a check. So, but usually what's not being presented is the more negative aspects. That's why it's a half truth. But even that being said, a lot of people are becoming more aware of this half-truth, that this narrative isn't necessarily true. So then why is it that so many people still go? Is it that they just, lack a mind of their own? It's like a lack of cognitive ability? Is it peer pressure? Is it that narrative, falling for the narrative that's going to land you a good job? Is it a pursuit of higher learning education, or is it self-challenge, to challenge themselves? Well, personally, I will definitely say that peer pressure and the narrative that college will land you a good job are most likely the two main reasons that people are still generally going. Peer pressure is usually pressure from your family, your friends, primarily your family. Go to school, you represent our family, and you may be put in a compromising situation. And then also narrative that if I go to college, I'll definitely get a good job. With respect to this, though, there are usually two sides of every argument, every coin. So, what are some, with respect to this dilemma, what are some of the benefits and costs to going to college? Well, some of the benefits of going to college is you're going to interact with different individuals, and usually these different individuals may be different cultures than yourself. You also get a slight simulation of the working world. See, college is something in which you're going to be working with other people. Regardless of what class you do, there's going to be a high chance in one or several of your classes you will be working with other people via group work, collaboration, and so forth. The working world is very much like that, whereas the professor is like your boss / supervisor, and you're like the workers underneath the professor and so forth. Another benefit is the experiences that you have within college, the quote-unquote college experience. This is not necessarily joining the fraternities and so forth, or the dorm parties and such, but more so the unique situations that you may find yourself in trying to accomplish the goal of getting in college and getting out, class to class, and so forth. Potential networking, it gives you a delayed responsibility in terms of you're not necessarily, most times because of financial aid and so forth, you're not necessarily, and maybe if you live in your parents' house too, you're not thrust out into the working world to go out there and immediately, produce results, which is usually find a job and find somewhere to live and so forth. So in doing this, this gives you time to plan out, hey, if I want to change something, if I want to get certain affairs in order, if I want to learn certain skills. So that's a benefit. Another benefit is you'll 100%, I say this with 100% certainty, you will absolutely broaden your perspective if you go to college. And what I mean by that, even if you don't remember a single thing from any class, I can guarantee you your perspective will broaden. Not necessarily from the course material that you will find yourself going through, but just interactions with the professors, your fellow students, and so forth, and the like. Sometimes even regular staff, like people that, like janitors and so forth. You'll 100% broaden your perspective. What are some of the costs, though? Some of the costs is it's very expensive. So there's a very high chance you may be in debt and you may not be able to repay the debt. So something to keep in mind. Many people, especially nowadays, are not working within their major. So that means let's say I go to school for the degree in biology, I might not be a researcher. I might be working at McDonald's. That could very well happen. It's very common and unfortunate. Another cost is that it's a major life decision that is made at an early age. These things are not advertised as the advertised goal of college. So when they send you those brochures, those pamphlets, those are absolutely not advertised. That's part of that half-truth that I was talking about before, because the main goals of the colleges usually is to make a profit, which is you paying the tuition and so forth. So, some tips on whether or not to go to college. Well, my recommendation is that with respect to that decision, you yourself, whether you're 17 years old, I don't care if you're 15 years old, 17 years old, 18, 19, however old you are, the main thing I recommend that you do is that you need to determine within yourself if it's feasible or not feasible. These are going to be example of some things that will make it feasible or it makes sense for you to go or not go. A set of factors that would make sense is if you have a scholarship, usually a full scholarship, free ride. You could give it a shot. I mean, that's a factor in which maybe it's recommend you at least give it a shot. Another factor that would make college generally feasible, if you're unsure, is if you have the means to afford it and the desire to go. This desire to go is very important. So if you have the means to afford it, but you do not have the desire to go, it's not necessarily recommended. But this is something with you being honest with yourself. The next factor is you want to work in a specific field. So let's say I want to be an engineer, I want to be a doctor, and so forth. You have to generally go to college. There's no way around that. So if you want a professional career that requires it, but also if you want to take a gamble on going to college, which is usually a loan, to engage in the factors of the quote unquote college experience, or to learn practical knowledge, or to challenge yourself, that is generally a scenario in which your motivation for college outweighs the risk. Just be aware of what the risk is. That's very important. Now, factors in which it's not necessarily feasible. If your primary motivation is from peer pressure from your family or friends, it's strongly not recommended to go to college just because you're getting peer pressure from your family and friends. That's extremely important. You need something else. If it's there, you need something else. I will back that 100%. Another factor in which it's not feasible, if you can't afford to go to college, you do not have the money for it, the loan will destroy your finances and so forth, well, your credit and so forth. Hey, this school is very expensive. I'm probably not going to be able to afford to pay this off. I don't have a plan to pay this off. It might not be recommended. And you're not willing to take a gamble with respect to that loan. So that means your motivation for college is less than your risk. So you're not willing to take that risk, not recommended. And the final factor in which this is not feasible is that that school is not for you. You went through high school, you went through middle school, and you're like, listen, learning in the classroom setting is not for me. Maybe I'm more of a with my hands kind of guy. I'm more of a speaker. It's not for me. So it's very important to know. So with respect to this, I'm going to just briefly give you my goal versus the advertised goal. So the general advertised goal, like I said, is pretty much everything in one that's been before, all mixed together, generally speaking. Prestige, learning practical knowledge, the quote-unquote college experience, and a requirement to get a job. So when I went to school, I got a degree in biology. The current line of work I'm working in is not biology, not even close. But when I went to school, initially, it was just a stepping stone to go to medical school so I could be a doctor. But as I went through my coursework and classes, it developed into something else. I mean, that's still part of it at the time, but it became something else in which I learned to make the most of my present, So more focusing on the journey than the destination. Challenging myself with the classwork was extremely hard. So I try to dedicate that as a challenge to myself to, hey, I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to face this. And also, the biggest thing I learned from college is my dedication to be a lifelong learner. So always try my best to improve. And with that, it's cycles of rise and also falls. It's not just always rising, but you fall sometimes, but you go back up and down, up and down. Hopefully the overall trajectory is up though, but you have to accept that rises come with falls. And with that, I just want to say once again, my recommendation with respect to whether you should go to college or not is to make an informed decision. So do your own due diligence. Use this video, other videos, the advice of older people that are a lot wiser than you, than people around you, hopefully, when you're making this decision. It's very important that you make an informed decision, because what usually the recruiters from college is not telling you, usually because it's a half truth, is that these things are very real. That there's another side where it's very expensive. You may not necessarily get a job from just going to college, but that doesn't necessarily invalidate college by itself. You have to determine that for yourself. Finally, I'd like to conclude the video with the motto of the channel, which is basically reflection. Reflect on things in your life and that you see around you. Develop a framework with respect to what you reflected on. And finally, take action. So when you make that framework, that plan of action, that plan to attack, you act on it. You take action and make it a reality to the best of your ability. All right, guys. Like I said, you guys have a good one. 3 Course Thoughts out.